All right, welcome back, ethics students. Today, we're diving into an explainer on the psychological architecture of moral decision-making. We're constantly told that the demands of morality are pretty straightforward, right? Just be kind, don't lie, don't hurt anyone. But as you all already know, the reality of moral life is, well, it's a mess. It's incredibly messy. So today, we're going to unpack exactly what goes on inside the human mind when we get forced into those impossible corners, the situations where, no matter what we do, someone is going to get hurt.
So why do the right choices sometimes feel absolutely terrible? We're going to start by looking at why making the logically or mathematically correct choice in a really complex situation can leave us just feeling awful. Seriously, why is it that even when we meticulously calculate the absolute best possible outcome, we're still left with this incredibly heavy sense of guilt? Well, to figure that out, we have to pop the hood and look at the actual psychological machinery driving our moral judgments.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at trivial trades versus genuine dilemmas. Second, emotion, reason, and automatic aversion. Third, the clash of sacred values. Fourth, the integrating role of reasoning. And finally, ultimate dilemmas and moral residue. Let's get right to it.
Section 1. Trivial trades versus genuine dilemmas.
Okay, let's set our baseline by defining what a genuine dilemma is not. This distinction is absolutely crucial for understanding the true weight of moral conflict. Imagine you promise to grab coffee with a friend, just an ordinary everyday commitment. But on your way there, you see a child collapse on the sidewalk. Naturally, you stop to help and you break your coffee date. Psychologists call this a trivial trade-off. It's epistemically easy, meaning it's totally obvious what the right thing to do is, and it's psychologically easy. You're definitely not going to lose sleep over missing that coffee. But compare that to a genuine dilemma. This is where you have two incredibly weighty moral considerations pulling you in totally incompatible directions. In a genuine dilemma, whatever you choose, you're essentially forced to do something that is ordinarily considered deeply wrong.
Section 2. Emotion, reason, and automatic aversion.
Now, let's completely deconstruct the internal mechanics of that agony. Why do these specific choices cause such intense internal tension? Well, think of classic dual process theory. It's basically a massive battle between your heart and your head. On one side, we have System 1. This is our fast, automatic, entirely emotion-driven response. It's basically screaming, "Do not cause harm." On the other side, we have System 2, our slow, deliberative reasoning process that's trying to coldly calculate the greater good. In these tough spots, these two systems spit out totally conflicting outputs. Your rational head might clearly see that a painful sacrifice will actually save more lives in the long run. But your emotional heart, it completely rebels against the very idea of causing harm. And that creates a really profound, agonizing psychological tension. But it's not just a simple tug-of-war between emotion and reason. It's actually heavily driven by something called automatic aversion. We all have this deeply ingrained intrinsic feeling that performing a harmful action, like physically hurting someone, is just fundamentally wrong and highly unpleasant. This automatic aversion is the exact reason why people feel such intense guilt and psychological conflict, even when their logical brain tells them they absolutely made the right call under the circumstances. The physical action itself just feels terrible to execute, completely regardless of the justification.
Section 3. The clash of sacred values. Let's actually push a bit past that simple dual process theory. Because true dilemmas, they're often a tragic clash of equally profound values. It's not just reason versus emotion. Sometimes it's a head-on collision of your absolute core principles. The key here is understanding sacred values. These are absolute, non-negotiable moral rules, things like human life or fundamental justice. Now, unlike our earlier example with the coffee date, a sacred value literally cannot be traded away. If a crisis forces you to choose between an ordinary commitment and a sacred value, boom, it's a trivial trade-off. Easy. But when a situation forces you to trade one sacred value for another sacred value, that's a tragic dilemma. You're being asked to sacrifice the absolute, and that generates immense psychological distress.
Think about the classic runaway trolley problem we always study in ethics, the one pitting 5 lives against 1. Now, in the psychology of choices, this is actually often processed like a neat little mathematical puzzle. But contrast that with the hospital director dilemma. Imagine a director with only 1 life-saving liver but 2 dying children. That is not just emotion fighting reason. That is a completely symmetrical clash of equally sacred values. Letting either child die feels terrible for the exact same reasons. The dilemma exists because the exact same sacred value applies directly to 2 totally incompatible courses of action.
Section 4. The integrating role of reasoning.
So when faced with these impossible, tragic trade-offs, how on earth does the human mind navigate the chaos? Well, we have to look at the actual function of our deliberative minds. Our reasoning plays a crucial integrating role here. It's not just acting as some cold utilitarian calculator, simply adding up lives saved. Reasoning is what allows us to weigh a whole multitude of really complex factors all at once. We bring in role-based duties, like special loyalties to our families or our brothers in arms. We bring in religious beliefs, absolute moral rules. We even do character evaluation. We ask ourselves, what would a virtuous, honest, or brave person do in this situation? Reasoning is basically the sophisticated tool we use to try and align these tragic choices with our complex moral duties and our overarching identity.
Section 5. Ultimate Dilemmas and Moral Residue. All right, we've finally arrived at the heaviest material in this explainer. What exactly happens to the human psyche when every single available option is, quite literally, a moral failure? If you look at the landscape of moral choices, it isolates this smaller, incredibly dark circle known as ultimate dilemmas. These are a very specific, harrowing subset of genuine dilemmas where every possible resolution is considered morally wrong. In these extremely rare situations, it's not about finding the right choice anymore. It's about the tragic fact that you are condemned to act wrongly. You are going to violate a sacred value no matter what path you take. Take a look at this visceral first-hand account from a military veteran. It perfectly and tragically captures the inescapable trauma of an ultimate dilemma. Imagine trying to give life-saving medical treatment to an injured civilian as a nurse, only to receive absolute military orders to evacuate immediately. The sacred value of saving a civilian life violently clashes with the sacred, role-based duty of following absolute military orders. They had to choose, and by choosing the soldier's oath, they had to violate the nurse's oath. It's a tragic situation where absolutely no outcome leaves the individual's moral integrity intact.
And because of that automatic aversion to harm we talked about, plus the shattering of those sacred values, individuals like that veteran are left with what philosophers call moral residue. It's this lasting, incredibly heavy sense of deep moral unease and affective regret. The real tragedy here is that this negative emotion persists even when the person cognitively knows for a fact they made the only possible choice under the circumstances. They don't have cognitive regret, they wouldn't necessarily change their decision, but they have this intense affective regret simply because they were forced into a position where they had to do something terrible.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a rather provocative thought to consider as you continue your studies in ethics. If the basic architecture of our psychology dictates that making the best choice in a terrible situation still results in this heavy, lingering moral residue, is it practically possible to ever emerge from an ultimate dilemma with your moral self completely uncompromised? Keep that question in the back of your mind as you continue to navigate the incredibly fascinating yet completely messy reality of human morality. Thanks for joining me.